Welcome to KrassenCast episode 18. We're back. Yeah, welcome back. It's been, about 2 months now? Yeah, so for those of you who don't know, I'm Ed Krassenstein. This is my twin brother, Brian Krassenstein. And we're going to be doing this episode live on Facebook. It will be available also through normal means, but it will be live on Facebook as well. And you can find us on Facebook at Krassenstein Brothers. Yeah, and on iTunes under KrassenCast. So today we have a lot to talk about. There's a lot going on, and there's been a lot that's happened since last time we've done a podcast. Most notably, gun violence. That's something we're going to focus on in this episode. We're also going to talk about the death of Jeffrey Epstein, which appears to be a suicide. I know there's a lot of conspiracy theories out there. And we're also going to get into our Twitter banning a little bit. We'll talk a little bit more about what happened on Twitter and why we're no longer on there. Yeah, so let's start with gun violence. So, it's been a debate that's been going on since probably Columbine. It's been ongoing, and there's been debates on how you fix this problem of mass shootings and gun violence in America. And, people have different answers, but really nothing has gotten done. Yeah, I mean, every time one of these attacks or massacres take place, you have the attack, you have, it's too soon to talk about gun violence. Thoughts and prayers go out to the victims. And then when it's about time we can start talking about it, another attack happens. Yeah, really in my mind, there's a few things that can be done to not solve the mass shooting problem or the gun violence problem in America, but there's things that can be done to help stop it, help stop some of the mass shootings. Not all of them, but if we can stop one mass shooting, if we can stop one gun death, that's going to be worth it, right? Yeah, absolutely. If we can do one thing to stop one death, that thing is worth doing. And I think that we're kind of growing immune as a society to these massacres, and we can't let that happen. Well, it's something like 93% of Americans support universal background checks, and 70% of Americans support the banning of assault weapons. And the thing that really gets me, Brian, is when we say ban assault weapons, people start throwing out things like, oh, the Second Amendment won't allow that, or they say there's no definition of assault weapons. But that's not an issue. That's not really a hurdle that could get in the way of real change, because it's been done before in 1994, I believe, under Bill Clinton, and it worked. Yeah, it worked. And gun deaths, mass shootings plummeted at the time, I think, until Bush let it expire in 2000 and I think 2. Yeah, I believe mass shootings under Clinton, after the assault weapons ban went into effect, I believe they fell something like 43%. And then once it expired, they rose 200%. So it works, and it's not unconstitutional. Nobody wants to take away your guns. We just want to limit what types of guns are able to be legal. Nobody's saying take your guns away. I think everybody should have the right to own a gun if you can pass a universal background check. Well, and the thing is that guns and weapons are already limited. Yeah, I can't go out and buy a automatic machine gun or a rocket launcher and then go to Walmart and walk around with it, right? Yeah, so there's lines that can be drawn constitutionally to limit the sale of certain guns. And I know a lot of people on the right want to say, oh, this is unconstitutional, and they want to make it out to be Democrats are coming for your guns, and that's not the case. Well, that's a scare tactic. They like the status quo. The NRA is paying these politicians. The NRA is in their pockets. The politicians know that if they give way and go get a little more lenient and kind of push for some kind of, whether it's background checks or these red flag laws, that the NRA is going to not give them the money they've been giving them. Exactly, and it's the NRA. That's the NRA is what is controlling what's happening in politics when it comes to gun reform. Most of Americans want these common sense gun reform measures, but the NRA is paying politicians to vote against them. And until that changes, I think we're just gonna keep running into these debates that end with no solution at all. How do you think some of the citizens in some of these Republican states that have open carry laws would take say a man that looks like he might be Muslim walks into a Walmart with an AR-15 and a backpack full of 100 rounds of ammunition, maybe a handgun in his other hand, and he just starts smiling. How do you think some of these Republican voters would feel then, and especially if they're in the Walmart with their kids shopping for school clothes? Well, that's a good point. I actually saw a tweet made by a Muslim man who suggested the same thing. But it kind of cracks me up that people say a good guy with a gun will stop a bad guy with a gun. But people who have in these open carry states, they're not carrying around AR-15 or another semi-automatic assault rifle. They're in the store, maybe they have a handgun, and if somebody walks in with an AR-15, do you really think he's going to have a chance at stopping him? They're hiding behind probably a desk that's being sold at Walmart, hoping that they don't get shot. I'm okay with open carry. I'm okay with people carrying handguns with them. I'm okay with that. It's just I think there's certain weapons that should not be legal, and I think sure you can buy them on the black market. That's another argument of the right. But at the same time, if you make them illegal and you penalize the individuals who are selling them or transferring them illegally and penalize them heavily, I think, like, send them to prison for 10 years if you sell an illegal arm. You do that and you have a buyback program, maybe for, over a period of 5 months, the government says, I'm going to buy back all these guns and maybe pay more than retail for them. Well, that's what New Zealand just did. They just had a buyback program. I think they took in like 10,000 guns like within the first couple of weeks. Imagine if they did something here. And there are, of course, going to be collectors who are going to keep their AR-15s or AK-47s. And that's probably to be expected. There's nothing there. The police aren't going to go into your home and confiscate your weapons. Yeah, but I mean, if you do have one and it's illegal, somebody could report you, and then they'd have calls to get a search warrant to get one. But I think these weapons need to be taken off the street and they need to be made illegal. And sure, there's going to be a black market for them, but there's black market for drugs. That doesn't mean you're going to legalize cocaine and heroin, right? Exactly. All right, so why don't we move on to talk a little bit about Jeffrey Epstein. What do you think, Brian? Suicide or murder? Suicide. I agree. I think it's a suicide. There's all these conspiracy theories. Somebody had him killed. I think what happened was that they allowed him to kill himself. Yeah, these prison guards, they're probably not always the most ethical people. You don't know if the guard maybe said, hey, let this guy kill himself, I walked away too long. I get your point. It's like, if I was a prison guard, would I really care if this guy kills himself? It's like he probably deserves to die, So was it political? Who knows? I mean, will we ever find out? I doubt it. Well, I think we'll find out the circumstances. It's going to be whether people actually believe them. And I think that the president feeding into these conspiracy theories like he retweeted a tweet basically suggesting that Clinton had Epstein killed. And that's just ridiculous. I mean, in this situation, there is, I don't want to say that you shouldn't talk about conspiracy theories and possible theories. I mean, the guy was very kind of fun to talk about. Well, and he is very high profile. We don't know the facts yet. Is it possible that somebody of power got into the prison somehow and told a guard or paid off a guard? It's possible, but to just for the president to go there and suggest, tweet out a tweet that says that Clinton was responsible, that's just irresponsible. Yeah, well, it's like he's the one who's in charge of the DOJ. So he's the one responsible more so than anyone else. Him and William Barr, who's the attorney general, they're in charge of the prison system. They're the ones who should have been making sure that under no circumstances does somebody not pay attention to Epstein while he's under the suicide watch. I mean, what was it, 3-4 weeks ago, he tried killing himself already. Why weren't they watching? Well, I don't want to say they should have made an exception because of the high profileness of this case, because they should do this for every prisoner, but they should have made an exception. They should have went out of their way in order to make sure this guy doesn't kill himself or get killed, whether you think that he killed himself or got killed. Yeah, and again, it falls on the shoulders of William Barr. Sure, he's not the one who's guarding Epstein, but he should have taken more measures, knowing that this was a real possibility. Well, and it's kind of funny because Barr is kind of like, oh, we're going to investigate this to the full extent of the law, and he's like trying to shift the blame away from himself when he's really in charge of it all. Yeah, well, and there's probably going to be an inspector general's investigation, so that will go over top of Barr's head, which is good. And I know Congress is already starting to investigate or requesting certain documents and whatnot. So we'll see how this unfolds. I doubt we're going to get too many answers, though. Yeah, and it's probably going to be a long road ahead. Obviously, Epstein's no longer, the case is going to be dropped on Epstein, but hopefully they dig into some of these people that are connected to him. And I heard last night that they were actually at his private island in the Virgin Islands, the FBI, and they were digging through stuff. So hopefully they find stuff that he's had hidden. Maybe he had compromising material on some of these individuals who he kind of, I guess you could say, pimp girls out to. Well, so why was the FBI just raiding his island now? Why was that? Because of his death, or is it just because it's their normal progression in their investigation? Like, would they have done this if he didn't die? Because I sure hope they would have. Do you know if they were, maybe they could have been there before? I know that the news story broke yesterday that they were there. It could have been happening before his death. I don't know. I'm sure we don't know everything that the FBI is doing. We just know what the media is reporting. Right. So another topic we wanted to touch on, since it's been a while since we've had these podcasts, and if you follow us on Twitter, you know that our Twitter accounts, they vanished. That's because we got banned by Twitter. And it's really a weird situation with what happened on Twitter. And we're still a little confused about the reasoning and if we broke a rule or not. Yeah, on May 23rd, both of our Twitter accounts were suspended indefinitely, I guess. And we when we found this out, we emailed Twitter. We had a contact with Twitter, and we decided to ask them what happened, and they pretty much gave us a runaround. They didn't tell us what happened. They didn't give us any information. They basically told us that buying interactions and buying accounts were against Twitter's terms of service, and having multiple accounts in order to manipulate this platform is against their terms of service. But we never bought any interactions, and we never bought any kind of accounts, or we didn't try manipulating anything. So we had multiple accounts. We had multiple accounts, but they weren't used for anything that was against Twitter's terms of service. Twitter allows you to have multiple accounts. So as far as we're concerned, we didn't break any rules. Twitter didn't actually say specifically what we did. They released a general statement just saying it's against Twitter rules to pay for interactions or buy Twitter accounts. And we never bought Twitter accounts. We never paid for interactions. That never happened. And Twitter, we talked to other media outlets who have asked Twitter questions about this. And whenever they ask Twitter to specifically say if we actually did these things, Twitter refuses to answer, and they just give the same press statement. So did we ever buy Twitter accounts? Did we ever pay for interactions? Absolutely no. We did, I think it was like 9 years ago, make a post on Twitter with one of our old accounts that we were buying Twitter accounts. But at the time, that wasn't against Twitter's terms of service, and we never actually bought any accounts. Right. So we're still at a loss here. We did run multiple accounts, and this was not against Twitter's terms of service in any way that we. And by multiple, he means like maybe 5 accounts, and they're related to other businesses. We didn't have like fake accounts that were responding to our tweets or commenting on our tweets. Right. And we had 2 accounts that we created that our wives were both using. We had an individual who was actually coming to our home, taking photographs, going to my wife's business and taking photographs. And this person was posting this on Twitter, but he had us blocked. So we created these alternate accounts just so that we could kind of investigate what this guy was doing. Why was this guy stalking us? And we started getting threatening emails and threatening letters in the mail, threatening our families. And we reported this to the FBI, and we believed that this individual was this individual who was posting these pictures on Twitter. So we wanted to see what was going on. So we created these other accounts. And my wife would go into it. I think Eddie's wife would use it.
I have multiple wives now.
Eddie's wife would use it. And there was 1 or 2 times where that account liked one of our podcast tweets. So technically, Twitter could say we were manipulating things in that respect.
Well, see, the thing that happens is sometimes you're logged in with your Twitter account. You don't realize you're logged in with the other account, and you take the same actions you would with your account. And there's another time when Trump, if you guys don't know, Trump actually blocked both of us on Twitter. So we actually created another Twitter account in order to reply to Trump. So Twitter could look at that as us breaking the rules, but in the end, the courts said that Trump was not allowed to block us. So, I mean, we were just upholding our rights as American citizens to reply to him, because that's what the First Amendment says.
Well, and I want to add that you're allowed to have multiple Twitter accounts. In fact, the mobile app for Twitter allows you to sign in with, I think, 5 or 10 different accounts at once, so that you can switch between the accounts. So there's nothing against having multiple accounts. We've run dozens of websites, I think like 60 websites over the last 12 years. And we had a Twitter account for many of these, separate Twitter accounts than our personal Twitter account.
And at the same time, when we got rid of the website or didn't transfer the Twitter account to that site, we kept those Twitter accounts. In some cases, we changed the name of those Twitter accounts to something more relevant for maybe a future business, or like my personal Twitter account used to actually, I know I get a lot of people making fun of me for this, used to be called Justin Bieber Fan Club. It was for a social media website that we ran that was directed at people who were fans of celebrities.
Well, and
I'm not a Justin Bieber fan, for anybody who wants to know, by the way.
Not that there's anything wrong with that.
Not that there's anything wrong with being a Justin Bieber fan.
But anyway, why would we buy interactions or Twitter accounts or pay for any kind of interaction on Twitter when we had, I think the month before we were banned, I think I had 300 million impressions of my tweets, and Eddie had, I think, like 200 million.
Yeah, and like how many, like every one of our tweets would get between 1,000 and like 10,000 retweets. So even if we did have 100 accounts, what would 100 likes or retweets do when you're getting 10,000 retweets? It just doesn't make sense. There's no reason for us to waste our time doing that.
And I want to point out that our frustration and any anger we had over this wasn't because Twitter doesn't have a right to ban people. We think absolutely Twitter has a right to ban people. They're a private company. They can choose who they want to ban. But our anger was over the fact that Twitter put out this statement that implied that we were buying interactions, and that our popularity, I guess you could say, on Twitter was fraudulent. And that's what pissed us off, I think, the most, because we weren't buying anything. We weren't buying accounts. We had other accounts, but we weren't using it to manipulate the platform in any way whatsoever. And I challenged Twitter to put forth information saying the opposite, because I know for a fact they can't do that.
Well, I think they're just basing it on things that they believe happened, like the fact that we had multiple accounts, that even though it wasn't against the rules, and the fact that years ago, I think it was 9 years ago, we made a post saying we were buying Twitter accounts, and we never actually bought them.
Well, and I also want to point out that that there was a screen cap of a forum, a website, where someone with a username that we've used in the past
and their email address
posted that we were buying Twitter accounts. And this was made in late 2017, I believe. And I know for a fact this was coming from 4chan, the white supremacist, I guess you could say, message board.
Well, and why would we use our known screen name with our known email address to make a post that we're buying accounts? It's like, we're not that stupid.
Well, and the screenshot shows that account that posted it logged in at the time. So what are the chances that some random person logged into that forum and saw us online and that post at that exact time, when we only had like 2 posts on that forum? That fake account had 2 posts on that forum. So what are the chances that person that took that screenshot caught it when we were logged in?
Yeah. So, it's what's done's done. We're not on Twitter anymore, but we are on Facebook. You just search for KrassenCast Brothers, and we're right there.
I have to say it's a lot less stressful, and and we're not the target of conspiracy theories so much anymore.
Yeah, there's still memes going around with us on Twitter, and we still have access to Twitter. We can still view tweets and stuff. We just can't reply.
And we're not creating other accounts. I'm going to respect Twitter's wishes here. There's no point in creating another account.
I have another Twitter account that I had like years ago. It's still there. I think it's Eddie Krassenstein or Ed Krassenstein. I don't use it. I haven't logged in. I haven't made a tweet from it for probably 5 years. So if Twitter wants to remove that account, they can do so, because I'm not interested in going back on Twitter.
Right. So anyway, there's a lot of fake, false information out there about us.
Don't say fake news.
Not fake news, just false information, and it's frustrating because we can't reply to some of it on Twitter. But all in all, I think I'm probably happier off of Twitter right now than I was on Twitter, just because it was stressful, it was aggravating, it was just so toxic, and I just don't think I need that anymore.
Yeah, and there's other people posting on Twitter about us with these allegations that are ridiculous. Like one person said we ran an auction site that was a scam site, and that's not true. That site we actually sold 2 years before these reviews were saying they were scammed. It's like people don't investigate far enough. They just jump to conclusions. And it's defamatory, but like the people saying these things are people who have no respect in the journalistic world. It's people who like lost their jobs because they accuse people of things. So it just keeps going and going.
Yeah, and I personally like Facebook better. You can kind of have a conversation. We're not posting as much as we did on Twitter. It gives us a lot more time to do more important things. Anyway, I think that wraps this episode up, and we want to start doing more episodes like this. Maybe we'll have some more guests on. It's nice to be back doing this podcast because it gives us a voice, and we just wanted to express our thoughts and opinions. Whether you agree with us or not, that's your prerogative.
Yeah, so we're on iTunes. That's basically going to be the main place where we upload these podcasts, and Facebook under Krassenstein Brothers. We got rid of Patreon, where people could donate money to help us build up the podcast. We're not asking for money. This is just a completely free podcast. And I think that should wrap up episode 18 of KrassenCast.
I don't know if this actually worked the whole way through. Our computer locked up, but
yeah, thanks guys.
Thanks again.